Recently, the global economy has been going through rough patches, as you might have noticed if you've been watching this channel. We've seen everything from corporate debt troubles to military conflicts and rising tensions worldwide. And now, the experts and the markets can't agree on the future of the global economy. It's become a hot topic, especially among optimistic investors who believe that despite all the challenges, the global economy will land smoothly and interest rates won't shoot up too much. Fingers crossed. Now, let's get into the discourse. The bet started when markets across the Atlantic began to see rallies in their activities. It was initially exhilarating, especially when the UK, US and Eurozone recorded surprising declines in headline inflations. This development excited people about the possibilities of a soft landing for the global economy. Klaus Visterson, the chief Eurozone economist at Pantheon Macroeconomics, even partook in the excitement, saying the inflation drops were, in a sense, some light at the end of the tunnel for us all. The UK's inflation dropped from 8.7% to 7.9% in just 1 month, which was a record-breaking move. And in the US, after 2 years of sky-high prices, inflation finally hit its lowest point at 3% in June compared to last year. These drops suggest that the global economy might be heading for that soft landing, with nothing to stop it. But as much as the recent headlines have kept investors optimistic, economists believe it's a glittery but not gold scenario. Yes, it's good that central banks are recording success in their quests to meet inflation drop targets. But economists are saying people need to understand how meeting these targets work first. For instance, it will be tough for central banks to maintain these drop targets without causing job losses for many people. So in the end, maybe it's not so much a cause for celebration as we think. This week, central bankers from the US and Eurozone plan to gather to discuss their issue of raising interest rates, and investors are crossing their fingers, hoping that the good news on inflation will continue to convince them to slow down on raising these interest rates. Whether the US and Eurozone decide to slow down or not, though, it may not matter now, because markets are already predicting a quarter-point increase in US interest rates from the Federal Reserve. This increase will likely be attributable to the fact that inflation in the US only dropped as far as it did after interest rate hikes were executed by the Fed. On the other hand, markets are also betting that whatever increase the Federal Reserve pulls off will be the peak of it, and they might start easing up on the interest rates in 2024. The European Central Bank and the Bank of England are also expected to raise interest rates, but investors don't think they'll go as high as previously expected when news of the inflation drops hadn't gone out yet. So things might be calming down on that side, as one of the ECB's governing council members has even hinted at a pause in rate increases. In any case, it's a roller coaster because economists still need to be sold on the idea that these inflation drops automatically mean growth in the coming months. Yes, the drops can be attributed to the increased interest rates across the Atlantic. However, some of them argue that we still haven't seen the full impact of these higher interest rates yet, and they're also predicting a sharp slowdown in economies in the months to come. On the other hand, some other economists think that if our economies manage to stay strong and job markets keep chugging along, central banks might have to take a stricter stance on money matters than they currently anticipate. In other words, if people want to keep their jobs, it will mean more work for central banks as the months go by, because, remember, maintaining these inflation drops at their low target rates is a difficult job on its own. Unemployment rates are currently at historic lows on both sides of the Atlantic, and official data shows wages growing faster than central banks want for their 2% inflation target. How will the central banks maintain their targets while contributing to these ever-increasing wages? That is the million-dollar question that gets answered with, they can't. A drop in inflation rates means a rise in prices and an increase in disposable income, especially where nominal wage growth is constant. Also, sometimes inflation drops only happen because there's a decrease in demand in the country and not necessarily because of economic competitiveness. In such cases, these drops create deflationary pressures that make it difficult to boost the national economy. This is why Robert Sockin, the global economist at Citi, thinks it'll be a real rarity for central banks to hit their inflation targets without significant improvements in the job market. Luigi Speranza, on the other hand, chief economist at BNP Paribas, believes that the delayed effects of these interest rate hikes will lead to a recession in the US and a prolonged period of sluggish growth in the Eurozone. By the way, inflation in the Eurozone has dropped from 10.6% to 5.5% since last October. Also, since inflation eased off from double digits to a milder 3% in the US, some economists have gotten more optimistic about the country, saying it could have a soft landing. Goldman Sachs even puts the chance of a US recession in the next year at just 20%, citing financial conditions, housing market improvement, and growth in factory building as factors. Adam Posen, the president of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, thinks the US might manage to tame inflation without falling into a recession, especially considering the relatively weaker bargaining power of labour there. But the Eurozone, on the other hand, might not have it so easy. Strong workers' rights there could make it harder for inflation to behave like it does in the US. Recent data also suggests the region might even be headed for another economic contraction, where aggregate economic activity will decrease. Now, in the UK, policymakers still need help maintaining credibility while trying to keep public sector pay in check. As much as these policymakers have recorded record-breaking inflation drops, matters of job security still need to be addressed. They've resolved some pay disputes at this time, but the prominent doctors' union is still causing headaches. The public sector has faced 15 years of attrition in pay value, leading to recruitment and retention problems. This is just an instance of how drops in inflation rates can affect jobs in real time, and why, as the economists have warned, these inflation drops aren't all they seem to be at first glance. In the private sector, wage rate growth has slowed in the US and levelled off in the Eurozone. The UK, however, is still seeing wages pick up steam. We've yet to see how this wage increase will be handled alongside the inflation drops, but we remain hopeful that adequate solutions will be brought up. The Bank of England's Deputy Governor, Dave Ramsden, recently warned investors not to read too much into the latest inflation numbers. He said price pressures were still way too high, and the focus should be on wage growth and services inflation. But of course, some folks in the UK are still trying to see the brighter side. The ongoing scream has been disinflation is back for a couple of days now, which seems to be what everyone is focusing on. Other analysts think the UK's output might shrink with the inflation drops, but a series of contractions totaling around 0.5% would still be the mildest recession they've ever had. Considering how bleak things looked at the beginning of the year, that's a decent result. Like a soft landing too, you know? So, that's all there is on the question of a soft landing for the global economy. Will there be a rescue for the global economy in the coming months? Is disinflation the saviour it purports itself to be? We'll just have to wait and see. Until next time, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and let us know your thoughts on the recent inflation drops in the comments section. Also, share this video when you can and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our information videos about the global economy space. Stay informed, stay enlightened, and take care.